I'm happy to call out OpenAI for being cynical and knowing exactly what they were doing, which is build up a viral moment and then lock it down once it becomes legally problematic. Good morning, everybody. Today we're going to be doing something a little bit different. It is a relative, in the world of artificial intelligence, a relatively slow news day, in that there are no new models, there's no new huge announcement, everything is settled down for the weekend. That kind of tells me that we're probably going to see something big next week, probably Gemini 3. Which was rumoured to come out yesterday, but it did not. So what we're going to be doing is I'm going to be running through the top resources for learning about artificial intelligence, how to get a steady foundation in how to use AI and what AI actually is, and then talking about how you can start to build on that foundation, keep up to date with all of the news. So it's going to be a different type of show today. I've still got the live audience, we'll be answering questions as well, but just be aware that we're not going to be going through the news as we would normally, because there's nothing very interesting, and instead we're going to be walking through some learning resources, and I'm going to be going kind of step by step through things that I've found very useful in my journey and that I've recommended to other people and they've found very handy as well. We are going through learning resources. So let's hop in. What we're going to do is we're going to start with some interesting, fun videos and then move on to more academic, more complicated topics as we go on. And then I'm going to loop back and talk about how you can keep up to date with what on earth is going on in artificial intelligence. So first up, a couple of videos that I recommend from YouTube, just explaining where we are with artificial intelligence right now. There's a handful. I would say Casually Explained is fantastic. Most of these are humorous, these early level videos, but he talks about the different types of AI. So narrow intelligence, general intelligence, and super intelligence, which is a distinction that a lot of people still mix up. And he does it in a very humorous way, and I highly recommend this video and indeed all of Casually Explained's videos. The next one is going to be Exurb1a. Never actually said it out loud. I assume Exurb1a, which is similar. This is talking about consciousness in artificial intelligence. So again, these are popular approaches, talking about AI, talking about how they're going to impact society and kind of some of the philosophical questions around them. They're not necessarily practical, but they're very interesting. So how will we know when AI is conscious? By Exurb1a. And again, with Exurb1a, a lot like Casually Explained, all of their videos are pretty good if you want a deep dive into a topic whilst it's still being very humorous and entertaining at the same time. 3 Blue 1 Brown. So 3 Blue 1 Brown is a YouTuber who talks about mathematics primarily. So if we go over to his channel, most of it is mathematics, but he's got a very good playlist on neural nets. So here, neural networks, he has a full course, which is how many videos? 10 videos. These first few ones here, talking about deep learning, gradient descent, backpropagation calculus. You don't necessarily need to know the calculus, but these videos are extremely good at explaining what's actually happening inside of a large language network. If you want to get a bit deeper, I would also have a look at this book. So this is How AI Works by Roland Newsel, I'm not quite sure how you say it, which starts to look at how large language models work. But as you can see, it's relatively thin compared to a lot of technical books, and he keeps the language light. So I'd recommend looking at 3 Blue 1 Brown, the neural networks course. Again, these are like 20-minute long videos. They touch on the mathematics, but without you having to do the mathematics yourself. And the mathematics behind these large language models is not that complex. There's some linear algebra, optimization, the calculus. And if you haven't covered any of this stuff, it doesn't really matter, because these videos will explain what they're doing and why they're doing it. And for the most part, you're not going to be, well, you're never going to be handwriting differential equations in order to work with AI. It's just having a kind of intuitive understanding of how they're working. It's useful to know a little bit about the mathematics. So this series in particular is fantastic for that. Also, something that I should mention is, because this is a different type of live, I'm not doing the news today, I'm doing learning resources. The newsletter, which will come out on Monday, will have a list of all of these learning resources. So it will act as a guide, basically a reference guide. So make sure you subscribe to the newsletter and you'll get a big long list, which is going to be an easy way to access all of this. And I'll give you all the links as well. From here, once you've had a look at 3 Blue 1 Brown, you don't necessarily have to go through the whole course. There's some other ones like this one, LLMs Explained Briefly, which is inside the course. This is a quick
large language model is how they can have hundreds of billions of these parameters.
I think he has another one. He's got another one that's kind of entry level as well. If you have a look around his site, his YouTube, I'm sure you'll find it. They're fantastic for getting a grip of what's actually happening inside a large language model. At the same time, I'd have a look at this. So Steven Wolfram, he created Wolfram Alpha and the Wolfram, is it a programming language? I don't know what you'd call it. It's a way to do mathematics using computers, we'll put it that way. It's available on Amazon, so I have a printed copy of it because it's nice to have, but the whole book is available on this one page as well. And as you can see, it's quite a long article, but he's walking through, and this came out before ChatGPT. I think he's walking through what a large language model does. No, I'm sorry, 2023. So he does talk about ChatGPT. This came out before GPT-4. I might get the chronology wrong, but this was when GPT 3.5 came out and people were like, oh my God, what is this? This article dropped, and it's a really good explainer because Steven Wolfram is very good at explaining technical and mathematical concepts in layman language. So you can start off, it gets more and more complex. So if we get to the end, and the stuff about multidimensional space, etc., but he does talk through it in a way that makes it very consumable. Even if you don't have a background in mathematics, it just might take a bit of time to work through it. I would say with something like this though, because ChatGPT has such a good knowledge of this particular article and this particular short book, you can actually ask it. You can say, hey, I'm reading Steven Wolfram's What is a ChatGPT Doing? And I don't really understand this part. And ChatGPT will be able to help you with it. So you can use this as a framework for learning. This gives you the content, but you can also talk ChatGPT to work your way through it. If you work through these kind of resources, which take a couple of weeks, you're going to know more about large language models 99% of the people out there. For most people, it's magic. You will also, and I think this is the important takeaway, you'll realize it's all mathematics. Again, having emotional connections with their models or starting to think the model is conscious, etc. You will know where this is all based from, and it's based from the mathematics. And yes, there are emergent properties, so it's basically just numbers and being tumbled around in a machine. And I think having that strong foundational knowledge of how these things work is really useful when it comes to cutting through a lot of the nonsense out there. So, hi, I'm a software engineer and have been using AI to help me write certain pieces of code. Awesome. Copilot and Gemini. Copilot Microsoft. Definitely check out Claude if you are coding, because Claude is very good at code in particular. Now, one of my favorite, Karpathy, Andre Karpathy. So there are going to be these 3 videos. They are not short, so be aware of that. There's a 1-hour talk, which is his shortest version, which is a condensed version of his 3.5-hour talk, a deep dive into LLMs like ChatGPT. I would highly recommend just watching them all. It's going to take you, God, what is that, 8 hours. I did it all on a treadmill. He's a very good explainer, and he's explaining the mathematics, he's explaining how these things work. It's a long topic, basically. So definitely check out all 3 of these general audience videos. 1-hour talk, Intro to Large Language Models. The 3.5-hour talk, Deep Dive into LLMs, is fantastic, really good. And then the other one is How to Use LLMs, which I think is his most recent one, which is a bit more high level. But the deep dive into LLMs like ChatGPT, which is unfortunately 3.5 hours long, but if you chunk it up, you'll be able to get through it. That one in particular will give you a very intuitive understanding of what is going on inside of these. And so I highly recommend that. I know it's very long, so find something to do while you're listening. And if you get through that video, you will know, again, more than everybody out there. A quick plug for my own site, so AI with Kyle. I have a huge catalogue of about 700,000 words I've written on using AI, but specifically using AI for business. So, like how to actually make money with AI. There's a whole short course about that, and that's all free. So AI with Kyle, if you want to start to use AI on a daily basis, especially for entrepreneurial ideas. Okay, I think I've sorted out I'm going to close down these videos, otherwise they might keep playing in the background. There we go. Let's move on to the next one, which is a bit more serious. Deeplearning.ai is fantastic. This is where you go if you want to start to get a structured course of learning for artificial intelligence. I'm going to pull up his courses. It's not just Andrew, but he started it. So there's going to be a few which are really good. Generative AI for everyone. This is a run through of the basic concepts in AI. It's quite slow, but it's highly valuable to work through. There's another one called AI for everyone, which I'm not seeing, but generative AI for everyone, this one is probably going to be more relevant because generative AI is the type of AI we are using on a daily basis for the most part. So I definitely recommend generative AI, but this site is just absolutely full of courses. Let me see if I can show you what that looks like. AI Python for beginners. You can enroll for free, but what it's going to do is going to take you over to, oh, no, it didn't even take us to Coursera. Okay, I think he's split with Coursera. It used to take you to Coursera, and then Coursera would try to get you to pay, and you'd have to look down below and there'd be the free version, which you'd be able to audit the course and not pay. It looks like Andrew has pulled it off Coursera, so everything is free in that case. Generally, with some of them, if you want a certificate, I think you can pay. So deeplearning.ai is where you go if you want a bit more structure in your learning. These courses are, for example, this one is 10 hours, so it's going to take you a bit of time to work through. And the one I'd highly recommend starting with is Generative AI for Everyone. So week 1, Introduction to Generative AI, what is generative AI, etc. Week 2, Generative AI prompts, and then talk about training, fine-tuning, RLHF, etc. So it goes through the workflows of how you would deploy generative AI in work and life. So it's a high-level course, definitely well worth checking out. If I vibe code through Claude, does that mean the content will be in the cloud? So yeah, you cannot deploy Claude locally. Anthropic do not have any open source models that you can deploy on your own system. So yes, when you're using Claude, the information is going back and forward between your computer, your interface, and Anthropic servers, with Claude in particular. I can't think of a way to run Claude locally. So yes, it will go to their servers. Whether it's visible by the company is a different question. They will train. It depends on what kind of plan you're on. They will generally train on your data. With the API, though, they won't train on it. It's just for inference. If you want your data to be 100% private and secure, you've got to run locally. So that would not work with Claude. If there's private content you don't want to leak, then you can't use Claude, unfortunately. Yeah, Jack is 100% right there. If it's sensitive private data, don't put it in Claude or ChatGPT. Okay, moving on to some other. Actually, first I wanted to highlight this, Anthropic's Academy, which is relatively new. OpenAI also have an academy, but I would say the OpenAI Academy is not very good. It's all over the place, whereas the Anthropic Academy is a lot more focused, so I'd recommend it. So it's just kind of hard to find anything in the the OpenAI Academy. So it starts with managing FOI, Freedom of Information requests, with custom GPTs. Okay, so you go to the burger menu and then content from the homepage, and then there's some more broad ones like ChatGPT fundamentals, prompting, etc. But it's generally a mess. I don't rate it very much. Whereas the Anthropic Academy is a lot more systematic. So this is going to be a better way to find a pathway through learning. So it has build with Claude, Claude for work, Claude for personal. You can click on there and then it would literally just have, here are all the lessons you need to work through. So I'd recommend the Anthropic Academy over the OpenAI Academy, personally. Okay, let's say you're getting deep into this stuff now. You've watched all of Andre Karpathy's stuff. You've done a couple of courses on deeplearning.ai. Maybe you've put together a local model just to play around with on your computer, and you want to learn more about what on earth is going on, and you want to go deep dive it. So there's something called the AI Canon, and it comes from Andreessen Horowitz. So it's at a16z.com. This basically has a list of all of the most important research papers for you to kind of work through to understand what's been happening with the history of AI. I would combine this with something like, actually I'm just looking at the books I've got down here. Actually no, there's no need to complicate it. It has things like Software 2.0, which is by Karpathy. Again, this is just a short article. This is not a full academic paper. It has got What is ChatGPT Doing and How Does It Work, which we talked about briefly, by Wolfram Alpha, Transformers Explained, something about Stable Diffusion, so that's for images. And it walks through the seminal articles and the seminal papers connected to artificial intelligence. It also has free courses. For example, the Stanford course. This is Andrew again. This is deep learning. Andrew teaching machine learning. So that is going a bit deeper, but everything is available here. References, books, and it's a very deep and detailed reading list. There is also, and I'll put this in the newsletter so you'll be able to access everything, there's an Airtable that somebody's put together that has all of this in it. So you can make a copy into your own Airtable and you can tick it off when you've read it, etc. So this is a very nice way to access all this information. It would be fun to build an application around this, huh? To convert this whole AI canon into a web app or an app. That'd be fun. So This I highly recommend. Obviously, this is a lot deeper. I've seen some people recommend this as a starting place. Nope, not at all. Start with the basic stuff that we covered earlier. Warm yourself up and then have a look around the AI canon. And honestly, the stuff at the beginning, so the foundational learning about neural networks, backpropagation, etc., and the gentle introduction, that stuff is going to be the most important. And then when you go further down, it just gets more and more in depth, and you don't necessarily need to know that stuff unless you are getting into machine learning, unless you are starting to build your own models yourself. But it's up to you. You go as deep as you want to go. It's an endless rabbit hole if you really want to go further down. Have you discussed agent kits? So the agent builder, I discussed it on Wednesday. I'm not very impressed generally. When they said, oh, by the way, we built it in 6 weeks, and was it 80%? 80% it was AI code. When they released that, yeah, that makes sense. I do not know who it is for. So it's in this weird place where it's not simple enough for a complete newbie to open up and be like, oh, cool, I can build workflows with this. And then it's not technical enough. So people who are actually building this automation and agents, they don't want to do drag and drop node-based design. They're not using N8N, they're not using Zapier and make.com. They've moved on to the next level. So they've dropped it into a weird position between the very beginners and the people who are actually building agents. So I don't know who it's for. Yesterday I was on a call with Google. So Google Opal, which is, they fall into a different part of the market, but Google Opal have done a really clever thing where you can build workflows and you can build mini apps using Google Opal, but it starts with chat. So it starts with you saying, hey, I want to build an application that allows me to make memes based off these images, and you explain to it in natural language what you want to do. And then it will build the workflow and it will build the nodes in the same way that N8N, Zapier, or Agent Builder do. But it starts with chat first and foremost. I don't know why OpenAI did not use a chat-based interface for the agent builder, because by doing so, they would have made it accessible to people. But instead, they fall into this weird middle ground where I just don't know who it's for. It's also a bit buggy as well. So I think N8N, etc. are safe for now. But I'm very interested to see what happens with Opal. So I'm on a kind of a testing panel with Google for Google Opal. So once I play around a bit more, I will report back. But so far it's cool. It makes it a lot easier for people who have no idea what a node-based workflow should look like. It makes it a lot easier for them to build workflows. Okay, and now let's move on to how the hell do you keep up to date with what is happening in the world of artificial intelligence? Okay, first up, there is my live show that I do every day. I try to cut through some of the noise. So even on days like today, when there isn't any real news, I'm not just going to sit here and make stuff up and pretend things are important. I'm doing something else instead. And so I'm trying to cut through the noise because there's a huge amount of noise. And this is why you also don't hear me saying RIP Canva. There's a new AI in town that kills Canva, blah, blah, blah. Nonsense. So there's only a few people who are like that, who really cut through the noise and give you what the signal is. And so I'm going to give you a couple. Nate B. Jones, the greybeard of AI, a lovely guy as well. He has a Substack. You can find his stuff on TikTok. He talks about AI on TikTok. He's got 400,000 fans over on TikTok. And he does these videos every day where he just talks to camera about what's going on. Pretty much everything he says is pure signal. So I highly recommend following him over on TikTok. If you want to go a bit deeper, he has a Substack, which he writes every single day, which is amazing. And again, it's more in-depth on Nate. If you like his TikToks, you'll love his Substack. So I highly recommend his work. He's also done a rebrand recently, which is very cool, using his glasses and his beanie, but no beard, interestingly. The second one up is Ethan Mollick. So Ethan is mainly on Twitter and LinkedIn. So I'll put him up on LinkedIn. That's where he posts. Go and check out his stuff there. He's also written a book called Co-Intelligence, which I highly recommend. It's hard to recommend books about AI because they go out of date so quickly. And I've got so many books where you read them, like this one. Basic AI, good book, very good book, but you read through and I think the last chapter is about, there's something called ChatGPT on the horizon. That looks interesting. And so even by being a couple of years old, your books become out of date. Is it this one? Or maybe it's this one. No, this one is the one that it talks about the rumbling of a ChatGPT on the horizon. So this is The Road to Conscious Machines by Michael Woolridge. But Ethan Mollick's co-intelligence is genuinely useful because it doesn't talk about model specifics. It just talks about a human's relationships with artificial intelligence and how we need to use them as a co-intelligence. So it's a very good book on understanding how we should think about AI. So he also writes on Twitter and on X, and he has a Substack called One Useful Thing. He publishes less frequently than Nate, I'd say once a week or so. But again, a very high signal to noise ratio. So those two I'd highly recommend. For the news, my favorite is Rundown. So the Rundown AI, which is run by Rowan Chung. So there's lots of AI news and newsletters out there, including my own, but the Rundown AI is probably the best. And so I'd highly recommend subscribing to that. And then, as I mentioned, there's also mine. So I think the Rundown is interesting, but it doesn't editorialize. So it's relatively dry. So my newsletter, I try to give a bit more perspective and call people out when we know that they are marketing and we know that they're being cynical. Like the fact that Sora launched and it's the most popular app ever, I think, in terms of speed, and it beat ChatGPT to become the most downloaded app in 7 days. But then they reined back the creative controls and they stopped you using IP. They stopped you doing certain videos. You couldn't have Sam Altman eating Pikachu, for example. And now they've been review bombed down to 2.9. This kind of stuff is reported on the Rundown, but it tends to be more the facts only, whereas I'm happy to call out OpenAI for being cynical and knowing exactly what they were doing, which is build up a viral moment and then lock it down once it becomes legally problematic. So you can subscribe to my newsletter, link in the bio. I'm going to be in the Monday issue compiling all of these resources. So the resources that we talked about today will appear in order. I'll make it nice and easy to get through inside of the newsletter. Use it as your reading list moving forward. And also for the newsletter, if you sign up today, it's free. Again, tomorrow I'm launching in beta test my vibe coded app. Today's actually my final day of building it. I've had 30 days to build an application and launching it. So it will be launched on Saturday. So if you want to get access to that free as a beta tester, make sure you are subscribed. Awesome. So today was a bit of a different day. I'm going to finish up and I'm going to where I'm vibe coding, and it's the final day, 30 days of building a new product and launching it tomorrow. So join me there as well. Cool. Thank you so much, everybody.